It is the controversy of controversies in college football. The selection of the 4 teams to make the college football playoff. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, bringing you the very best in discussion, debate, and analysis of college football. You know that. For the smart fan, for the hardcore fan, that would be you. All right, this Tuesday night, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee will make its initial rankings known, the top 25. But what does everyone focus on? Rightfully so. It's the top 4 and those just missing the top 4. And if your team that you believe should be in the top 4 right now doesn't make the top 4 in the initial rankings, calm down, rest easy, and wait and be patient. And if you have confidence in your team, just wait for the big games to be played in November. Keep in mind that the first ever, the inaugural college football playoff selection that was released this week in 2014 included Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Auburn. It also included Florida State, who was undefeated and went on to win the ACC championship with the only undefeated record in the nation, and they, of course, were given the opportunity to defend their 2013 BCS championship, going to the national playoff. The other 3 teams weren't even close to making the college football playoff. Mississippi State with 3 losses. They lost the Orange Bowl. Ole Miss finished with 4 losses, and Auburn with 5 losses after losing the Outback Bowl to Wisconsin. They were nowhere to be found. And Ohio State, way back at number 16, made a run, winning its final 9 games, plus a Big Ten championship rout of Wisconsin to make the college football playoff. I don't anticipate a run like Ohio State's in 2014, nor a total collapse like the Auburn team of 2014 that lost 5 games out of the top 4 and some of the major contenders this year. But there will be changes. There will be upsets. There will be teams that vault over other teams and upset fan bases because they vaulted other teams with big wins. Because if the committee does what they have been charged to do and what they have stated each and every week, they completely do something similar to what I do in approaching my top 25 rankings. And I don't try to move positions. I don't try to guesstimate wins and the importance of wins and the impact of particular wins and losses and juxtapose and move teams around. I completely shut down the rankings and I rebuild the resumes each and every week. All right. The College Football Playoff Selection Committee has either stated to us overtly or by their actions have told us a number of things through the years. They credit conference championships. And, of course, 16 teams have been selected in 4 seasons, 4 per season, 2014, 15, 16, and 17. That's 16 teams. 14 of those teams have been conference champions. All right, we don't know who the conference champions are right now, but those teams that have a 13th data point in a conference championship game will most likely be selected. Ironically, the committee has never selected a team that's lost a conference championship game. They have selected Ohio State in 2016, Alabama in 2017, that lost before the conference championship game, did not even win its own division, and were left out of their respective conference championship games, but still made the playoff at 11-1. All right, the committee, they value a strong schedule. They tell us that they value a strong schedule. Now, there have been a few times in which they went against this particular edict. Washington had the easiest non-conference schedule in the country in 2016. They lost the toughest game on its schedule, losing to USC at home by 2 scores. And USC somewhat proved to be the best team in the Pac-12 that year, and Washington went to the college football playoff. But the committee has told us that they value a strong schedule, and especially scheduling strong non-conference opponents, and of course, winning those games. Value dominance on the field. So a team that has won games by narrow margins and have been fortunate to get out of difficult situations late in games, they're not going to be given the credit of sheer dominance, game control, the eye test, style points, whatever term you want to put on it, teams that dominate games. On the flip side, teams will be penalized for bad losses. Bad losses come in two different ways, or a combination of the two. One would be that you lose to a marginal team. Another would be that you lose badly. You are beaten down. You are drubbed. Iowa 55, Ohio State 24 is definitely a drubbing, a blasting, an annihilation. Now, we could argue over the quality of the opponent. Iowa was a decent team in finishing 8-5. I don't know what their record was at the time that they beat Ohio State, but they were a decent team, but certainly far from an elite team. And Ohio State, of course, has one of those type losses again this year, losing to Purdue by 29 points. All right, without further ado, let me mention one other possible factor that we saw for the first time. We've heard it talked about and referenced at times, but we saw it applied last season. Alabama was ravaged with injuries to its linebacking core late in the season following a loss to Auburn. The College Football Playoff Selection Committee, in gathering details about the injuries and believing that those players would come back for a college football playoff game, gave Alabama a bit of the benefit of the doubt. Was that the deciding factor? We don't know, but it was factored in, believing that some injured players at the linebacker position would come back for Alabama and be able to play in the playoffs. So there are some extraordinary circumstances. That was the first one that we've seen applied. All right. I was thinking about listing the top 4 plus the first 2 out. I also thought about a top 10. I thought about a top 25, which the College Football Playoff Selection Committee will unveil its top 25. AP and coaches by a poll style, its top 25. But instead of going any of those routes, I basically just listed out the teams that I believe still have a chance, a legitimate chance, even an outside chance. Even if a number of things have to work their way, they have a reasonable chance to get to the college football playoff. And I came up with 14 teams. I believe that 8 of them, I believe the top 8 teams have a strong chance that they basically control their own destiny. The top 8 teams basically control their own destiny. Then I think the next 4 teams, 9 through 12, that you will see here soon, those teams need a little help, but it's very reasonable that if they go on to win a conference championship and do not win any other games, lose any other games, they run the table, that they will make the college football playoff. It's not a certainty, but it's a strong, strong possibility, probability. And then the final 2 teams that I have here both have 2 losses and probably have a very difficult chance, of course, based on the history of making the college football playoff, but they are in prime position to get to their conference championship games and therefore could play their way if chaos ensues elsewhere. So these are the 14 teams that could make the college football playoff and my prediction of the college football rankings. Now, this has been requested of me to make a prediction on the first selection by the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. And what this turned out to be is, yes, it's a prediction of sorts, but I also believe it's how I would classify these teams, even though I've got a few of them different in my top 25. So, yes, this is the prediction of what their selections will be on Tuesday night. And again, these are the teams that have a chance to make the college football playoff. 1 through 8 control their own destiny. Teams 9, 10, 11, and 12 probably will make it if they run the table, and teams 13 and 14 need a whole lot of help. They have 2 losses. At number 14, we've got Utah. At number 13, Texas. Number 12 is West Virginia. Number 11, Ohio State. And here's the top 10. Washington State. Number 9 is UCF. We've got Kentucky at 8, Oklahoma at 7, Georgia 6, Michigan 5. And the final 4. At number 4, the LSU Tigers with possibly the best resume in college football with the best wins. But, of course, those wins have been tainted in recent weeks with Miami now 5-3 with losses to Virginia and Boston College. Auburn now 5-3 with losses to Tennessee and Mississippi State. in particular. So the best wins for LSU have been compromised. All right, at number 3, I've got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, which, of course, if they maintain that ranking, whether they lose one game or no games and are considered for a college football playoff, they would be almost automatically, especially with one loss, the most controversial selection, either in or out, because they do not play in a conference, and there will not be a 13th data point for Notre Dame. And most importantly, to me, it's not just a data point. It's an important data point. It's a difficult game. So if you play in a conference championship game in any of the 5 conferences, that final conference championship game is a difficult game against a quality opponent. And also, there's a reason we have conferences in college football. They represent areas of the country that are built to funnel into a national playoff. All right. At number 2, we've got the Clemson Tigers. The schedule is not great, but they have of recent been very dominating in wins over Florida State and Wake Forest in particular. They have a difficult game against Boston College upcoming, but Clemson is undefeated, as is Notre Dame, of course. And at number 1, they have been the most dominant team in college football. They have yet to play anyone currently ranked in the top 25. Texas A&M would be their best win in terms of an opponent, but the Aggies just lost to Mississippi State to drop to 5-3. So, of course, the big matchup with LSU in Death Valley is upcoming for Alabama. But the dominance has been overwhelming, and I don't factor it into my rankings, but I certainly believe it's in the back of the minds of the selection committee, the track record of Nick Saban and his football program, especially most recently last year, in getting the nod over Ohio State and then cashing in with a national championship. And that's Alabama at number 1. Those are my predictions for the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, which will be released on Tuesday night on ESPN. We'll come back, of course, on very late on Tuesday, probably early Wednesday morning, and I will let you know what I think of their initial rankings. Now, throughout the week, I'm going to have all sorts of content available to you, breaking this down from a number of angles, and, of course, previewing the big games and making our predictions for week 10 of college football. But right now, I'm working on looking at the initial rankings from 2014, 15, 16, and 17, and what they tell us about what transpired the rest of the season, what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee looked at initially, and then how it played out the rest of the season. I think you'll have some fun looking at the teams that rose up to reach the College Football Playoff and those teams that plummeted down into the depths of the rankings. And as we mentioned in that very first college football playoff selection rankings in 2014, the likes of Mississippi State, who finished outside the top 10 with 3 losses, Auburn, who finished with 5 losses after losing the Outback Bowl to Wisconsin, Ole Miss, who was a really good team, but they went 9-4 and were drubbed by TCU at the Peach Bowl 42-3, and Florida State, who won the ACC and finished undefeated in the regular season and postseason until they hit Oregon in the Rose Bowl and losing 59-20. Those are my thoughts on the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. My predictions, there they are, the top 4, the first 2 out. LSU at number 4, so Michigan and Georgia, the first 2 out. And my top 14, because those are the 14 teams that I believe have a shot, a decent shot, either very remote to they control their own destiny shot of making the college football playoffs. I would love to get your comments. Leave them down in the comments section. Like the video. Subscribe to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and we will see you soon.